Well, Anne Bradstreet was not an extraordinary individual in one sense. That is that she dealt with the same sorts of hardships that a lot of people did. She was an upper middle class woman, very educated, married her husband at a very early age, as a teenager, in fact. But when we think of that, we think, oh my gosh, married too young, how happy could the marriage be? People change over their lives and everything. However, by all accounts, Anne Bradstreet had a beautiful, loving, doting relationship even with her husband, who passed away before her, and it was very, very sad when it did happen to her. She was devastated by his death, wrote poetry to him while he was away on business. He had to leave quite often. He was an excellent provider and, from all accounts, a very loving and warm and gentle man. She had some children with him, obviously, but and some of whom she lost. And this was not uncommon. Infant mortality was something that was very, very difficult to deal with then, just as it is today. We have a view that maybe people took it more in stride then, but I don't think they did. I think humans are humans, no matter how what period of time they are. The death of a child is a devastating thing. She wrote poetry about these losses that she faced in her life. Her house burned down, her husband died, her son died, all kinds of things. And this one is particularly touching, in memory of my dear grandchild Elizabeth Bradstreet. And as we go through it, I want you to think of two things. One, if you're a good Orthodox Puritan, we'll see this with Michael Wigglesworth, then you truly believe that only God decides who is or is not saved. That is his decision alone. And it's not our place to judge God in that regard. And as difficult as it may be for you or for me to think that some children might not be saved, they might not be of the elect, and therefore will be damned to eternity. Strictly speaking, if you read Calvinism by the letter, as Michael Wigglesworth will point out, yes, some will be damned. And remember that the Puritans did not believe that you could absolutely know your eternal state, heaven or hell, in this life, only in the next life. So you could never know someone else's either. You certainly couldn't know theirs. So this leads to a real big problem when you deal with the death of a child, because instinctively you and I think, but they're innocent, they couldn't have sinned, it's impossible. And most modern theologians don't think children are in any risk of damnation, I think. But a strict Calvinist would say, well, that's not for me to say. I can't weigh in on that. It would be presumptuous of me to assume that it was going to be one way or the other. So as we read through this, a couple of things you want to think about is the nature of the sorrow, the sadness, the travail that she goes through, and this really difficult thing, balancing the belief in the child's innocence with belief in the doctrine of election or predestination, Calvinism. One thing I will point out is that it reads just like Ben Jonson's poem "On My First Son," and it is a poem of mourning, the loss of his first son. It was a devastating thing, and so this is very much right out of that. It reads just right like it. You and I might even call it plagiarism, but of course in the 17th century they didn't have a notion of plagiarism like they do today. It would have been considered flattery, and it would have been considered good taste to show that you imitated somebody else who was a famous poet, especially with these opening lines. It reads just like Johnson. Farewell, dear babe, my heart's too much content, meaning the babe was my heart's too much content. My heart was too contented with you. Farewell, sweet babe, the pleasure of mine eye. Farewell, fair flower, that for a space was lent. Right? I was too happy with you. I was too contented. I shouldn't have gotten so attached to you, because children are only lent to us for a short space. We only live here for a while. And so she's kind of beaten up on herself a little bit there. Then taken away into eternity. Blessed babe, why should I once bewail thy fate, or sigh the days so soon were terminate, since thou art settled in an everlasting state? Now stop there for a moment. Did she tell you which everlasting state that the child is in? No, she did not. She does not presume. Look at that again. Why should I bewail your fate? Why should I sigh, weep, that your days were so soon terminated on this earth, since you are settled in an everlasting state? But she doesn't say which one, does she? Because she's not presumptuous that way. It's done. I can't do anything about it. No one can. Either you're in heaven or you're in hell. But look at the next stanza. It's quite an interesting one. She uses kind of a tree metaphor, a flower metaphor, plant metaphor. By nature, trees do rot when they are grown, and plums and apples thoroughly ripe do fall, and corn and grass are in their season mown, and time brings down what is both strong and tall. But plants new set to be eradicate, seedlings, right, to be wiped out, and buds new blown, meaning bloomed, newly blooming buds on flowers. To have so short a date is by his hand alone that guides nature and fate. It's not natural for a child to die. It's not natural for any of these things to happen. It's got to be the hand of God. It's got to be providence, and I have to reconcile myself to providence. I have to reconcile. So it's a sort of stoic acceptance and resignation, but at the same time, she says there's just something unnatural about a child dying. It's not supposed to happen. You're supposed to die when you get old, not when you're little like that. But of course, there was an awful lot of it. The infant mortality rate was at least 30 to 50% at the time because of lack of advances in medicine, just hygiene sometimes. But it's a very, very sad poem, nevertheless very touching one, and shows a great deal of both passion and skill.